MP, it's our final event of the year.
Oh, it's all a bit sad, Bretto, but after 4 big events for 2018, we are going out with a bang with one more wellness base camp, and the location for this one is regional Victoria. The great town of Bendigo awaits.
Oh, and how's this for a lineup, MP? Bendigo will be rocking with the rock star of wellness, Damien Christoph.
The art of self-love angel herself, Kim Morrison, hits the stage.
As will the natural nutritionist, Steph Lowe.
And I'll tell you what, Steph's presentation at the summit on fasting was a showstopper. You'll be there, Bretto. I'll be there too.
And Wendy Stewart from Wendy's Way will be there to share her inspirational story, which really did go off at the Wellness Summit earlier this year.
It's Saturday, October 27 at the beautiful All Seasons Resort Hotel in Bendigo, and tickets are selling fast.
2-for-1 tickets for this one day of inspiration, information and empowerment are available at thewellnessbasecamp.com.
That's right, folks. Get your 2-for-1 tickets at thewellnessbasecamp.com before they run out and then the price goes up.
Finish your year of wellness in style at the Wellness Base Camp in Bendigo, Saturday, October 27.
Tickets at thewellnessbasecamp.com.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is Whatever You Condemn, You Breed, Attract or Become, which comes after we've had a few listeners' questions asking us to tease this point out a bit. So we thought that that is exactly what we would dedicate this podcast to. Before we do that, I'd love to remind you to jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and on the homepage with your email address, sign up to join our tribe. So once a week we can send you an update email on everything we've put out in the world, and you can pick and choose where you'd love to dive deeper. So nourishingthemother.com.au and homepage, join our tribe.
So this is a big, juicy one. And
it's a really big topic, isn't it? You're slightly apprehensive about diving into it in this platform.
I am, because I think it's one of those things. So this is a concept that I learned about probably 4 or 5 years ago when I first began studying human behaviour with Dr. John Demartini, who is just an expert around human behaviour and universal laws. So essentially, beyond human moral laws that we create, there are laws that govern the universe. The ones that people interested in spirituality would be most familiar with is the law of attraction. But there are a number of other ones, the law of conservation, which is essentially the support and challenge that's always at play all of the time. And this is another one. And this one comes about because if you imagine that everything is one and we're all mirrors of each other, therefore. So if we've got like a central, how do I even explain that? It's a really fumbling explanation.
No, it's not. Just keep going.
But
we'll all move with you.
Sure. So if we consider that there's this idea of universal oneness, and at some point, millions and trillions of years ago, there was a big explosion, and that one exploded into many, and we are now all stars, all reflections of the one. So that means that everybody is a mirror of everybody else. And of the 4,000 plus human traits, every single person has every single human trait. So if you spot some narcissist and you're labeling that narcissist and you're getting all aggro with that narcissist, the bigger the emotional charge you're carrying, the more you're disowning your own narcissist, because you can only perceive that in somebody else to the degree to which you've got it in yourself. And the more emotional you are about it, the more
you're disowning
it, or you're struggling to integrate it into yourself. And so this premise of whatever we condemn, we breed, attract or become, it's about teaching us to understand that whatever we're judging outside of us, we're calling into our own experience as a way to integrate more parts of ourselves, as a way to recognize that we are all things, and that the very thing that we judge as bad or wrong, the more that we have an emotional polarization on that, the more that we are simply by the law of physics calling ourselves to experience the other side of that which we don't yet see.
I always think of it like a pendulum swing.
Yeah.
The more I'm one-sided, highly emotional, highly charged, highly, that's wrong, this is right, the kind of further that pendulum swings up means that I will ultimately swing the pendulum in an equal way to the other side until I learn the lessons from that and I land in homeostasis somewhere in the middle, like a grandfather clock, right?
Yep.
Enough support and challenge to continue my growth, but not highly polarized and swinging one way or the other.
And the reality is, the more highly polarized we become, the more potential we also have for integration. So some of our biggest learnings come from our biggest polarizations because we've had to be on such a steep learning curve as a way to gain wisdom. So this is not to say that we're trying to be centered and balanced all the time and trying to avoid experiencing emotional charges, because we simply will by virtue of being human and by virtue of having a unique set of values that we all have. And so it's just interesting to have this as a inquiry for ourselves around, wow, like what am I really judging right now? What am I really finding difficult to accept in terms of the way the world is, in terms of how I am or the people around me? Because you'll find that the things that you're condemning, you'll have a level of passion about. And to have passion is actually to suffer.
So it's, I will never be like my mother.
Yeah.
And then you are literally shocked in pain at the amount of times you sound like your mother.
And the more that we use like never or always.
Yeah, the imperative language.
It's the imperative language.
Yeah.
It's not possible because.
And everyone who has affairs is so wrong.
Yes. And this was one that I really.
I'm so interested in this, that you had a really big charge on that.
Yeah, I did. And I'm trying to trace it back. So I guess, it's possibly epigenetic because I come from a very devout Catholic, line, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I even was exploring, even when I was engaged to Marcus, I remember doing so much self-inquiry and almost my own form of therapy through the huge amount of books that I consumed around what marriage meant and relationship, to the point where I really had to feel into and understand all states of feeling and being in long-term monogamous relationship. I needed to understand what it looked like and what I was going into in order to navigate it, I suppose. And I remember a conversation with my mother when I was having jittery feelings about it. And I was like, I could always just get a divorce if it doesn't work out. And my mum was so uncomfortable with my suggestion at that. And I felt such a sense that wasn't even an okay thing to even entertain, because, you just work through stuff. And so I had this...
Or you just move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Less working out, probably more moving on.
Yeah, moving on, right? And so I had this sense, and it might have been from, for a long, long time, that it wasn't, okay to just pack it in and have a divorce, or, it wasn't okay to not be faithful. You're making a choice here, the grass isn't greener, blah, 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 all of that stuff. I was also cheated on when I was 17, and I can recall how much that hurt. I also, interestingly, when I met Marcus, he'd been cheated on in a really horrible way, and so I hardcore judged her, and so there was just really a theme. And so what that then interestingly bred in me was that I would have these periods of time in my relationship where I would have these raging feelings of desire towards other random men. And I couldn't understand it, and it made me, and I judged myself for it, and it made me feel really uncomfortable, and it was just really difficult to navigate. And it was only...
Particularly when it's so taboo.
When it's so taboo. And I had, of course, convinced myself of all the reasons why infidelity was wrong and it destroyed relationships.
Why you were wrong.
Why I was wrong. what was with my body and why was I feeling like this and why couldn't I just feel like this towards my husband and why did I have to be attracted to random people on the street? And I really had made my desire wrong, not understanding as I do now that desire is like within us, and that it's part of attraction is part of being human, but that when we start to put walls up around what's okay attraction and what's not okay attraction and where we're sinning, right? That we cut off parts of ourselves and we cut off our ability to understand ourselves and move energies within us more deeply. And so it was only when I experienced this God, like in a way that I'd never experienced it before, and it was almost all consuming, and I'd recognized that it was a pattern. But this time I'd entered into it and was able to pull it all apart with someone who could help me pull it apart, like what was going on here. And it was quite...
Because what's different here is that you're not running on the feeling, right? The feelings, I've never felt like this way before. This person's so different. I'm clearly with the wrong person because I feel like this with this person. Those common thought processes and feelings that we have when we're in infatuation with another person, which is so easy in our humanness and in our passion state to just... I can't stop thinking about them. I can't stop feeling them. I can't stop the honeymoon period.
They must be my soulmate.
Yeah. All that stuff. So as opposed to running with that, you've done enough study on human behavior and what your mind is doing at this point that you sought facilitation through someone who could say to you, okay, let's break this apart because this has purpose. And there's a reason that it's here. Let's work that out and use it for you rather than you getting lost in it because it's on the way, not in the way, right?
It was actually a freaking most genius manifestation ever.
So tell us about that.
Because it was a culmination of what I'd probably been working on trying to understand for about 10 years. And I'd found it in a person who could help me learn it. Could help me learn why I was manifesting this, help me learn more about sexual energy and how to move and understand my own, because clearly it was flicking out everywhere and I wasn't understanding how to rein it in either.
How to have mastery over it.
Yeah. And I realized that our behavior, we want to fit it into some kind of neat little box. And we want to be able to explain away that X equals Y and this must be this. But sometimes the way in which we create feelings in our bodies can have an agenda that is not at all what we think of sexual. So I'd noticed a pattern with mine when I'd broken it down and had it facilitated was in times when I was feeling incredibly lethargic and maybe out of the conversation or really needing to wake myself up, I would turn on myself basically through attraction to someone in the room.
To give you the energy.
To give myself the energy to be present and to show up in a space because I was struggling. And
because you weren't doing it consciously.
And a surge of sexual energy was how I'd learned to bring myself into a space.
But sexual energy is life energy.
Yeah. And it's a feeling of aliveness. And if we haven't found a way to move that consciously, we'll develop it unconsciously, and then we'll develop feelings around it and beliefs around it that might not even be accurate, but that we've formed because of what we're judging as right or wrong. The feeling. Yeah, so I had a long story about it all being wrong. So of course, the more wrong I'm making it, the more you're running into
it. So genius.
And the more I'm having to face it, and the more it almost becomes like all consuming.
Because the intensity is raising the bar, getting you to try and balance it. Yeah. So you're running into it, and each time it's getting bigger. It's like lesson with
it's like how much can you like be with this? How much can you allow this to
well, it's almost testing you though in a way, isn't it? It's almost like the feather brick sledgehammer is, all right, here's a little bit. What are you going to do with it? No, haven't learned it. Have a bit more. What are you going to do? No, still not getting it. Have a bit more. Yeah. It's kind of like
and that. Also how much, how rock solid are your values as well? Was another test of it. So,
and you can only judge others to the extent you're already judging yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a really interesting one to learn and integrate. And I can say 3 years since that, what that has taught me about relationship, about my own desire, for others in the world and just,
the movement of your energy.
Movement of my own energy and understanding how infatuation and resentment work is just profound, because I don't think until sometimes we have these polarizations, we can call in the opportunity to see the other side, to learn what we're needing to learn. That essentially our intuition is trying to wake us up to through these polarizations that we have, through our judgments. And now, and you and I talk about this all of the time, our views on monogamy and relationship, even though they are deeply held personal views of our own, we can certainly see how that doesn't always work and how relationship is so much more nuanced than this is the right way, this is the wrong way, and he did this and she did that, and
we're in dynamic trying to get each other to grow all of the time.
Yes, and that they're people growing machines, and that
therefore there is no wrong and there is no right.
Yeah, and that this whole idea of this piece of paper that now forges you to somebody, it's only until someone no longer deeply values, and respects your own values. It's much more fluid than that. It's yes, it's a commitment, and yes, you have to have this shared vision and all of that kind of stuff. But relationship is so dynamic, and it's calling us into more of ourselves all of the time.
All of the time.
And sometimes the very things that you judge and that you fear will challenge or damage or disintegrate your relationship. Like for me, it was always that, that whole, fear of being cheated on or me cheating. Coming so close to that and looking that in the face was my greatest teacher.
Well, also that this time round, given that you'd had previous experiences of being the victim, this time you were looking at being the perpetrator, right?
Yeah.
So you're even calling yourself into balancing what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because you can no longer judge the person who does that.
Because what if you could do that? What if you could do the very thing that you judge so harshly in another? And how much does that call you into greater awareness and appreciation for more faces of humanity?
Oh, I do. I've said to you so many times, watching my world around me, the closer I get to 40, the more extraordinary I find relationships and how people move or don't move within them. And affairs has certainly been one of those things.
Yeah. I find it incredibly... It's so...
And you know what I hate actually now is this whole... what's that song? There's this popular song at the moment that's around about a guy who was cheated on and he's still desperately in love with her, and all his mates are saying, turn off your phone and it's painful but move on. Can you?
No, I don't know that one.
I'll try and think of it. But anyway. Yeah. And it drives me nuts because I think we're in this culture now that's like, fuck them.
Yeah.
Just leave them.
Yeah.
And I still think I know enough now not to judge affairs. I know enough now to look at them and think, choose to stay because there's the greater growth than choose to wipe them off and leave.
And usually, because the reality is that, and what we see so often, it's this idea that, the person that someone's having an affair with is this soulmate, is this perfect person, is this all of the things that my partner is not.
Let me tell you, every person that I have seen go through that runs smack bang into a nightmare.
Yeah.
And the bigger the infatuation, they're my everything, my body's never felt like this.
Oh, God.
The more I'm watching them going, it's coming and you don't know.
It's going to be ugly.
I'm fairly sure I've even said that to one of my friends, you're breeding a nightmare, you just can't see it right now.
Yeah.
And you can't see it and you don't want to see it until you are bang in it, and it is mind-blowing.
I'm quite sure that it would be brutal. And I think that this is the thing, right? And I was explaining this to someone recently because we were having this whole conversation, and she's like, I can't believe that other people feel like this, and she's like, no one talks about this. I'm like, yeah, exactly, because in our culture
it's still taboo.
We haven't made our normal human bodily sensations and desires
sexual energy. Yeah.
We haven't been able to make it okay.
No.
Because we judge it and say, well, if I desire that person or that someone at work or whoever, then I mustn't love my partner.
That's also why it's so rampant in our culture, is because of how much it's suppressed.
Because it's so repressed. Yeah, exactly. Right?
If it was out in the open.
Yeah. Whereas if we could look at it and go, wow, this is interesting. Why am I feeling like this? What is this calling me into waking up?
And the other thing is, like, it's never one-sided.
No. And it's not ever one-sided. And you know what? It's a dynamic even within the relationship that allows that to happen.
That's what I mean.
Because it will only happen if if a partner is not valuing you enough or is not meeting enough of how you perceive your needs are. So say you're diverging onto a different path, or you're growing in a different area and they're not with you there. They're not staying the course with you on some level. You're like an animal. Like you're naturally looking for other ways in which to grow. And sometimes it will be through desiring someone else, whether that's waking up something within yourself, whether that's bringing spark back because you're not getting as much attention as you think you should be getting at home. Like, that's a classic case for how that manifests. But we have so much choice in terms of how we allow that to play out. And what we are willing to open ourselves up to seeing, because as you say, whatever we're infatuated with, there's a hidden resentment. Whatever there's a fantasy on, there's a hidden nightmare. Like, we're going to meet it. And the reality is that we can, you compare this new like person or thing, and it can even be like a friendship. It can even be a friendship that's
this
all
is interesting,
consuming.
isn't it? Because you can define, as we have talked about before, there are things more intimate than sex.
Yeah.
So you can have an affair and not be gay, but have an affair with your girlfriend.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because they give you everything
because
and you love
open
them.
Up your heart.
Yes, and you talk about them and you text them every day, several times a day, and you catch up for drinks. And it's this socially acceptable affair.
Yeah.
Because whatever you're not being provided for within the relationship, you will look outside of it for. And there is a responsibility within a relationship to provide that.
Yep.
Otherwise, you will go looking for it.
Whatever. Like, I think it's a funny saying, but whatever you're not willing to provide your mate, you have to be willing to delegate.
That's genius.
Because that's the thing. You will go looking.
Yes.
So it's about providing within a relationship enough of what that other person deeply needing.
Being in relationship, it's not a passive process.
No.
Being in relationship is active, hard work.
Yeah.
Because you have to show up in the areas that are uncomfortable.
And I think this is exactly the same. The same goes for children, right? Like if you are not paying attention to what their interests are, if you are not meeting them where they're calling you into to engage, then they will go and get those needs met outside of your family, and you might not always like it. Especially as they grow, right? You would be noticing that with your son getting older.
Totally. All
relationships are calling us into greater I want to say growth, but also greater communication.
I was about to say that, it's easy to sit here and say, well, they don't provide me with this and he doesn't give me that. But often I think, as we talked about in last week's podcast, the masculine within all of us is seeking to provide, is seeking to be of service. But in order to allow them to be in service, we have to allow them to enter that space. We have to be willing to be the creative inspiration. Here's what I want. Yeah. Here's what I need. Here's how I want it. And to be giving that in such a detailed description that there is no room for assumption. And can you handle your own anxiety long enough to do that and deliver that message? Because it's not their responsibility to take your uncomfortable feelings away.
No.
It's your responsibility to show up for what you need, to be willing to ask for what you want and say it in a way that it is received.
And also really showing up to yourself in terms of what you consciously want and what you can ask for without jumping to this, he can't provide that anyway, and he's just not that. He's just,
here we go again. Yeah, he stepped right into my trap.
Looking for all of the ways that they can't meet what you want.
Yeah. Versus sitting really deeply in your vulnerability. and, you know, really speaking from a place of your internal desire and your internal truth and wanting to be in partnership on that path rather than, well, he's just there and I'm here.
And I think making it okay too to have the conversations about what you feel like you're on the cusp of needing. Like it was like the other day I said to my husband, there's like this saying, and I really am feeling it at the moment. It's like I can feel my hair being tugged by the stars again. And it's this idea, I'm feeling like the need to be reckless. And I want to do that in a way that's like in my relationship, you know, and I want to do it in a way that's like life-giving for us. You know, like I could feel this stirring of energy, and like, you know, sometimes you can just feel like you want to kind of,
I love that.
I don't know, not so much destroy stuff, but like just want to shake stuff up. And I want that to be in a conscious way in my family in a way that's meaningful. So I was like, do I need a couple of dates with Sven this week? Because we have like, you know, this whole date thing that we do. And I think it's okay sometimes to, even as you're formulating what you need, to bring that in, even as it's taking shape for you, even if you don't know what it looks like yet. Because they feel us just like we feel them. They feel us coming into the relationship and they feel us pulling away from it. And the more that we can meet, even when we don't quite know what we need, the more that makes it safe for them to meet when they don't quite know what they need, you know, like it's making safe that, you know, the growth together.
I love how you're redefining reckless too, because I certainly, you know, I meet a lot of women in my circles, and I do think that there's quite this concept of, well, I used to be reckless and I used to be free and I used to be, I don't know, energetic. And it's about seeing where you are still that, it's just in a different form. And I love that you're saying, I recognize I need to be reckless and connect with that vibrancy that I used to do in, I don't know, snowboarding or
whatever it
getting
was.
drunk at night or whatever it was for you, right? And I'm recognizing I'm feeling a pull towards that because there's an aliveness with that energy and I want that. How can I do it within my top values and bring it in here?
Yeah.
Because we can choose to move the energy into a relationship.
Yes.
No different to the energy of infatuation. You can choose to breathe that into your body, to feel the rush of aliveness, to feel the surge of sexual energy and go, oh, my body's here, I'm alive. Okay. So it's not that I'm not this, or it's not that my partner can't rouse this. Oh, it's here. So how do I do this and tap into what I'm doing here, but here with my partner? Because the story and the belief that you are running is what is stopping that. Not because you are or aren't something.
Yeah, not because you already know. You can feel that. It's only whatever filters you've put on the scenario at play that tells you that you can't have that in this other form, you know, in the form where you're ultimately desiring it, which is with your partner or in your relationship or in your family. It's the same thing with, you know, mothers who get caught up in the, oh, you know, like back when I was professional in my identity and this and that, like, you know, this sense of self that they feel like they've lost. It's the form that's changing. We can have all of those things. It's about how we awaken it and bring aliveness to it in the form that we're now finding ourselves in.
So we would love to take you on this journey in our Loathing to Loving program, which we have our next live round coming up for. So please jump on and have a look at nourishingthemother.com.au/online programs. And Loathing to Loving is 5 weeks where we walk you through 4 modules of online content that you have lifetime access to. And we give you 5 weeks of our undivided attention to facilitate you through what is coming up in your next evolution, which is why we do it 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Because we want you to feel alive and sparky and to actually apply the gems that you're getting in the podcast to your life rather than having them conceptual and trying to work your own stuff out on your own is a really hard place to be.
You can just get stuck in circles, right?
And stuck in your own story.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily break your own story apart on your own.
Yeah.
So please join us for Loathing to Loving. And to connect with you, Bridge,
suburbansandcastles.com, and you, Jules?
is thepleasurenutritionist.com. And I am still formulating my women's circle. So if you are interested, please shoot me a message.
Yes, get onto that. It's going to be amazing.
Thanks.
And connect with us, nourishingthemother.com. And no, hang on,
Yes, it is .com.au.
.com.au. Yes. Remember to nourish the mother to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.